She wasn't kicked out of first class. She was erased from it. 1 minute, Alicia Grant was sipping champagne, reviewing a $650 million contract that would change her company forever. The next, a uniformed attendant was standing over her, voice low but firm. "Ma'am, there's been a change. We'll need you to move." The air inside the cabin shifted. Conversations died mid-sentence. Cameras tilted just enough to catch what was happening. Alicia didn't flinch. She simply looked up, eyes steady, expression unreadable. The man beside the attendant, a tall executive type in a charcoal suit, was already lowering his briefcase to the carpet. He didn't ask. He assumed. That told her everything she needed to know. The attendant's badge read Lauren Peters. The logo on her blazer, Airline Global Airlines, was the same company that would, in less than 24 hours, sign a deal with Alicia's firm, Vertex Systems, to run their entire digital infrastructure. And here they were, telling the CEO of that company her seat was no longer available. Lauren offered a practiced smile. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience, Ms. Grant. Mr. Dalton is one of our Platinum Priority guests. We've made an adjustment. Premium Economy will be your new seat for this flight." Alicia glanced down at her boarding pass resting on the armrest. Seat 2A, confirmed, paid in full. The words Premium Economy landed like an insult disguised as courtesy. She let the silence hang. The man, Dalton, checked his watch, tapping the glass impatiently. He didn't look at her. Men like him rarely did. Alicia stood slowly. Not in protest, out of control. "Of course," she said, voice calm. "Lead the way." Lauren exhaled, visibly relieved there'd be no argument. As Alicia passed Dalton, she caught the scent of his cologne. Expensive, heavy, entitled. He still hadn't made eye contact. The walk from first class to premium economy felt longer than it should. She noticed the subtle changes. The lighting slightly harsher, the seats tighter, the curtains drawn to remind everyone where privilege began and ended. Lauren gestured. "Here you are, 5C. I'll make sure you're comfortable." Alicia smiled. "I'm sure you will." She sat, crossed her legs, and looked straight ahead. Around her, a few passengers pretended not to notice. Others watched through half-turned screens. That familiar mix of curiosity and silence. It wasn't new. She'd felt it in boardrooms, investor meetings, and hotel lobbies. The quiet disbelief that someone like her belonged at the top. But unlike most, Alicia Grant didn't measure power by how loudly she spoke. She measured it by results and consequences. Her phone buzzed once. A message from her COO. Final revisions cleared. Airline board signs tomorrow. 650 minutes confirmed. "Congratulations, boss." Alicia's eyes drifted toward the curtain ahead. Through a narrow gap, she saw Dalton lift a glass of her champagne. He smiled at something Lauren said. They laughed. The irony was almost poetic. The airline that owed its future to her software had just displaced her without hesitation. She opened her laptop, fingers resting on the keyboard for a long moment before typing. Initiate verification protocol on Airline network. Full diagnostic. Priority V9. A simple line of code. Routine. Harmless to the untrained eye. But inside Vertex's security architecture, that command would trigger a controlled system audit across Airline's digital operations. Every booking, every gate system, every live database, nothing would break. Everything would pause. She hit send. Alicia leaned back in her seat, eyes fixed on the aisle as the boarding process continued. Her pulse was calm, steady, like someone who'd already decided the outcome. Power doesn't shout, she thought. It waits. And when the time comes, it acts quietly, so the world only notices after it's too late to reverse. Lauren passed again, offering a paper cup of sparkling water. Alicia accepted it with a small nod. "Thank you," she said softly. The attendant hesitated, maybe sensing something in that tone, respectful but layered. Then she moved on. The captain's voice broke over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Airline Flight 417 from Boston to Seattle. Estimated flight time, 5 hours and 40 minutes. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight." Alicia smiled faintly at the irony of the word relax. As the engines roared to life and the aircraft began taxiing, she looked down at her phone again. A new notification flashed. Confirmation that Vertex's internal systems had begun their silent sweep across Airline's network. She locked the screen and closed her eyes. Tomorrow morning, Airline's CEO would be sitting across from her in a glass-walled conference room, waiting to finalize the largest contract in their history. By then, he'd have learned an important lesson. Power isn't granted, it's recognized, sometimes the hard way. The plane lifted from the runway, slicing through the night sky. Alicia Grant, the woman quietly relocated from first class, took a slow breath and let a single thought settle in her mind. They won't see it coming. 2 hours into the flight, the cabin lights dimmed. Most passengers slept or scrolled through half-loaded movies. Alicia didn't sleep. She watched the clouds drift beneath the wing, her reflection faint in the window. Her mind was calm but active, tracing every step of tomorrow's meeting, every reaction, every opening. But mostly, she waited. When you run a technology company like Vertex Systems, you learn patience. System checks take time. Power reveals itself slowly. Across the aisle, a businessman muttered at his frozen seat screen, "Why isn't this thing working?" Then another voice, "My Wi-Fi just cut out." Then another, "Payment screen won't load." One by one, small irritations rippled through the cabin. Not chaos, not yet, just confusion. Alicia's lips curved slightly. The audit had started. In the flight deck, a quiet alarm blinked on the operations panel. Network authentication error. Remote gateway timeout. The co-pilot frowned. That's odd. Systems not syncing with the ground servers. The captain waved it off. Probably a maintenance bug. IT will handle it, but IT wasn't handling it. IT didn't even know yet that the issue wasn't local. It was everywhere. Back in 5C, Alicia scrolled through her secure feed. Her dashboard pulsed with reports from the Vertex Command Center in Toronto. Airline Core. Database. Status. Isolated Flight Operations Server. Status. Read-only mode. Transaction Gateway. Status. Frozen for audit. Safe mode. The system wasn't broken. It was on pause. Every active terminal, booking portal, and transaction hub connected to Airline's internal cloud had quietly entered diagnostic lockdown. No passengers stranded. No safety risks. Just one giant reminder that Vertex owned the code. She sipped her water. Some people use words to demand respect. Others write code that makes the world stop moving until they're acknowledged. Lauren approached again, smiling, unaware of the digital storm unfolding above 30,000 feet. "Everything okay here, Miss Grant?" Alicia nodded. "Perfectly." Lauren looked relieved. "Good. We had a small issue with our in-flight network, but it should be fine soon." Alicia's tone was neutral. "I'm sure it will." Lauren moved on. Dalton, still seated in first class, pressed his call button. "Wi-Fi's out again. Can you reset it?" The attendant apologized. "We're trying, sir." He sighed loudly, tapping his phone like he could force it to obey. The same man who'd quietly displaced her an hour ago was now disconnected from his digital empire. His messages, his markets, his audience. Temporary silence, courtesy of the woman he'd dismissed. Alicia leaned back, eyes closed, listening to the muffled chatter of frustration trickling down the cabin. At Vertex headquarters, the night shift team lead sent her a direct ping. Audit 40% complete. No system breaches, no damage. Full control retained. She replied with a single word. Hold. The command froze the verification at its midpoint, like keeping a finger on a pause button. The plane sliced through the sky, engines steady, passengers restless. Alicia's phone buzzed again. An alert from the Airline Executive Network. Urgent, company-wide system instability. Ground operations temporarily offline. She could imagine the panic in their control center. Analysts scrambling. Managers shouting, executives calling IT support lines that led straight to Vertex Systems' help desk. And in a few hours, those same executives would be shaking her hand, pretending none of this had happened. But they'd remember the feeling. They'd remember that when Vertex called, the world listened. The pilot's voice returned, slightly tense. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing minor technical issues with our onboard systems. Nothing to worry about, but some features may be temporarily unavailable." Alicia opened her eyes and smiled. "Minor," she murmured. Her calm wasn't arrogance. It was calculation. The audit had made its point. Now came the timing. Lauren walked by again, checking on passengers. When she reached Alicia's row, she hesitated. "Ms. Grant, if I may, thank you for being so patient earlier. That situation at boarding shouldn't have happened." Alicia looked up, surprised by the sincerity. "It's all right, Lauren. Everyone just does their job." Lauren smiled faintly. "Still, you handled it better than most would have." Alicia nodded. "Experience helps." The attendant lingered for a moment, then moved on, still unaware that the quiet woman in 5C was the reason Airline's network lights were flickering across 3 continents. 30 minutes later, the aircraft descended toward Seattle. The city lights glimmered below. Calm, unaware. Alicia packed her laptop slowly, sliding her notes into a slim folder marked Vertex, Airline, Final Review. As the wheels touched down, her phone vibrated again. Audit complete. Network stable. All systems normal. No trace logged. She closed her eyes briefly, then typed her final message of the night. Resume. Schedule 10 hours a.m. Meeting. Bring documentation. When the cabin doors opened, passengers rushed to stand. Dalton pushed forward from first class, briefcase in hand, irritated and hurried. Lauren stepped aside for him. Then she caught Alicia's eye and gave a quick nod, a small gesture of respect she hadn't offered earlier. Alicia smiled, genuine this time. "Have a good evening." Lauren hesitated, then said quietly, "You too, Miss Grant." As Alicia stepped off the plane, the chill of the jet bridge hit her face. She breathed in, slow and measured. Her car was waiting outside, sleek, black, efficient. The driver opened the door. "Long flight?" he asked. "Productive," she replied. Inside the car, her phone rang. The caller ID read, Richard Vale, CEO, Airline Global Airlines. She let it ring once before answering. "Richard," she said evenly. "Alicia," he replied, voice tight. "We had a full systems freeze tonight. Was that related to the audit you mentioned earlier?" She paused just long enough to make him uncomfortable. "Everything's secure now, I assume." "Yes, but then we'll discuss the details in person," she said calmly. 10 o'clock sharp. Before he could respond, she ended the call. Outside, Seattle's skyline reflected off the car window. Calm, composed, unaware of the quiet lesson that had just been taught above the clouds. Morning light spilled through the glass walls of Airline Global's headquarters. The skyline shimmered across polished tables, a skyline Alicia Grant knew she'd helped sustain. Every aircraft in that sky ran on systems built by Vertex Systems. Her systems, yet the reception clerk barely looked up. "Name, please?" Alicia smiled slightly. "Alicia Grant, Vertex Systems. Meeting with Richard Vale at 10. The clerk's fingers froze mid-keystroke. "Of course, Ms. Grant. Right this way." Funny how fast tone could change once the right name appeared on a screen. Alicia followed a sleek assistant through the hallway toward the boardroom. Every few steps, she passed framed photos, Airline executives shaking hands with presidents, launching new aircraft, posing beside awards. Each one a reminder of an old truth. People love to display power until they're reminded who actually enables it. At the end of the corridor, glass doors slid open. The boardroom gleamed. Long table, 12 chairs, minimalist design, view of the runway in the distance. Richard Vale stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, tension coiled in his posture. When he saw her, he hung up fast. "Alicia." Richard. They shook hands. His grip was firm, but his eyes carried fatigue. An executive who hadn't slept since the system blackout. He gestured for her to sit. "Appreciate you coming in. Quite a night we had, I heard," she said. "System freeze mid-flight network reboot. Everything resolved by dawn." He nodded, trying to read her tone. "Any idea what caused it?" She opened her leather portfolio. Diagnostics indicate a verification loop triggered by the audit protocol. It stabilized automatically. He exhaled, relieved but cautious. So it wasn't. Malicious? Alicia looked up, meeting his gaze. "Vertex doesn't do malicious, Richard. We do precise." He smiled awkwardly. "Of course." But beneath his laugh sat discomfort, the kind born from losing control, even briefly. Board members began filing in. Alicia recognized faces: finance, operations, strategy. The same people who'd scrutinized every line of the contract for weeks. When everyone settled, Richard began. "Before we finalize the partnership, I want to acknowledge last night's issues. Fortunately, we had no flight disruptions, but it was a close call." All eyes turned to Alicia. She stayed composed. "The system behaved exactly as designed," she said evenly. "When unauthorized irregularities occur, whether accidental or internal, the network locks itself. Safety over speed." A pause. "So, to be clear," said one board member, "you're saying the blackout was our fault?" Alicia smiled faintly. "I'm saying the system protected your passengers before your team even knew there was a problem. You hired us to do that." A quiet ripple moved around the table, respect mixed with embarrassment. Richard leaned forward. "Alicia, we appreciate what Vertex brings to the table. But the optics, you can imagine." "I can," she said. "But optics fade. Reliability doesn't." She slid a document toward him. "The revised terms include additional oversight on your end. Fewer manual overrides. More automation. It prevents future incidents and keeps your team compliant." He scanned the pages, eyebrows rising. "That adds cost." "It adds security," she corrected. "And confidence, something your shareholders lost last night." He said nothing. Behind her calm tone lay quiet steel. She wasn't negotiating, she was finalizing. Midway through the meeting, a communications officer rushed in, whispering to Richard. He frowned. "Excuse me," then turned on the wall display. News headlines flashed. Airline network outage. No safety risk. Investigation underway. Vertex Systems confirms rapid containment protocol. Prevented major disruption. Alicia stayed still. She hadn't leaked it, but she knew her PR team had scheduled a press briefing at 10 a.m. sharp. Transparency before rumor. Richard read the headline again. Voice low. "You moved fast. Speed and control," she said. "Our brand promise," he nodded slowly. The fight in him was fading. When the board signed the final contract, Alicia waited until the last pen lifted before she spoke again. "There's one more thing." Every head turned. "Training." Richard frowned. "Training?" "Your staff. Flight ops, customer support, network engineers. They'll complete Vertex certification. We'll manage compliance directly." "That wasn't in the original." "It's in the final," she interrupted softly. "Standard clause after last night's verification results." He hesitated, then nodded. "Understood." Alicia stood. "Good, I'll have my team coordinate schedules. Congratulations, everyone. We just made aviation history a little safer." After the meeting, Richard walked her to the elevator. "You handled this flawlessly," he said. "Still, I wish that seat situation hadn't happened." Alicia turned to him, expression calm. "What seat situation?" He blinked, unsure. "I was told there was an issue at boarding?" "Minor misunderstanding," she said. "Resolved itself mid-flight." He studied her for a moment, then smiled, half in relief, half in recognition. "You're good at this." She pressed the elevator button. "I have to be." As the doors opened, she added, "Next time, Richard, make sure your team knows who's flying with them." The doors slid shut. Outside, Seattle's air was crisp, the noise of the city alive again. Her driver handed her a coffee. "Morning going well?" She smiled. Better than expected. In the rearview mirror, downtown reflected against the car's tinted glass. Order restored, reputation elevated, partnership sealed. She scrolled through her messages. One from her COO read, "Contract signed. Press coverage positive. You turned it into leverage." Another from Lauren Peters, the flight attendant. "Just saw your name on the news. I didn't know. I'm sorry for how I handled that," Alicia replied. "You handled it fine. We all learn where the real seat of power is." She hit send, closed her phone, and watched the skyline fade as the car merged into traffic. Her grandmother's words echoed again in her mind. Some people only see your place when you remind them where you belong. Last night, she'd done exactly that. By noon, Alicia Grant was back in her office at Vertex Systems, overlooking downtown Toronto. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Coffee still warm. News headlines glowing across 3 monitors. Her assistant, Maya, entered without knocking. She knew Alicia preferred efficiency over ceremony. "You've made every major outlet," Maya said, sliding a tablet across the desk. Headlines flashed. "Outage averted. Vertex Systems prevents. Global airline meltdown." How one tech firm saved Airline's reputation overnight. Vertex CEO Alicia Grant on the importance of ethical control. Alicia glanced through each one, expression calm. "They're spinning it the right way," she said. Maya grinned. "You're trending on LinkedIn. Over 1 million impressions in 3 hours." Alicia didn't respond. She didn't chase noise. She measured value. In contracts, leverage, and memory. Her phone buzzed. "Richard Vale again. Alicia," he said, trying to sound light. "We're getting positive press. I wanted to thank you for managing this with such professionalism." She smiled faintly. "You're welcome, Richard. Vertex believes in partnership transparency. We handle problems before they become scandals," he laughed. "And you do it gracefully. I owe you a dinner." "Let's just focus on execution," she replied. "That's the best thank you." When the call ended, she looked out at the skyline, the glass towers shimmering in afternoon light. Power, she thought, isn't a trophy. It's infrastructure. Invisible, unshakable, and often underestimated. Later that afternoon, her PR director, Samir, joined her in the conference room. "Congratulations," he said. "The narrative is sticking. Airline's investors are praising your systems for protecting data integrity. We just converted a crisis into a case study." Alicia nodded. "Good. Make sure the message is consistent. Emphasize responsibility, not luck." He scrolled through his tablet. "We're getting interview requests. Bloomberg, CNBC, Business Insider. Want to accept any?" "Only one," she said. "Bloomberg. I want professionals, not hype." Samir smiled. "Of course. Anything you want to highlight?" "Integrity," she said. "And intelligence over reaction. That's our brand." As Samir left, Maya returned, voice lowered. "There's something else." Alicia looked up. "Go ahead, internal leak from Airline. Someone in operations mentioned that. A passenger was relocated from first class before your flight. It's already on a travel forum." Alicia leaned back, curious. "And? They're speculating it was you." A pause. Then Alicia smiled, the slow kind that suggested calculation, not amusement. "Let it circulate," she said. Maya hesitated. "You don't want to deny it?" "No, people draw conclusions." "Let them." By evening, the thread had gone viral. The CEO they moved to economy class saved the airline the next day. Karma at 30,000 feet. Don't underestimate the quiet passenger. Comment sections flooded with admiration. Tweets, posts, reactions. A public eager to turn an unseen humiliation into poetic justice. Alicia didn't respond publicly. She didn't need to. The story had found its own rhythm. Truth wrapped in myth, powered by human instinct. Her assistant's voice broke her focus. "Do you want to address it officially?" She shook her head. "Silence is stronger than confirmation. Let people believe what they need to believe." Across the border, inside Airline's corporate office, chaos brewed. An internal memo leaked. Executives reprimanding staff over the boarding incident. The name Lauren Peters appeared in the thread, alongside apologies, investigations, and policy revisions. Alicia saw it all from her internal newsfeed, sipping her tea. She thought of Lauren, the attendant who'd looked nervous, who'd later apologized quietly. Alicia didn't want her punished. The real lesson wasn't about individuals. It was about systems. She picked up her phone, dialed Richard. "Richard, I saw the memo," she said. "Pull Lauren out of disciplinary review." He paused, surprised. "You're sure?" "She didn't make that decision," Alicia said calmly. "Someone above her did. Let's not confuse mistakes with hierarchy." He hesitated, then said softly, "Understood. You're a better leader than most of us," she smiled. "That's why you hired me." That night, Vertex's boardroom was quiet except for the hum of servers behind frosted glass. Alicia stood by the window, watching planes drift in and out of Pearson International. Each one carried her software in its circuitry. Every flight, every schedule, every payment processed through her code. It wasn't about the seat. It never had been. It was about presence. About reminding a world obsessed with symbols that power doesn't always sit in front. Sometimes it moves silently from behind the firewall. The next morning, Bloomberg called. "Ms. Grant, we'd love to discuss Vertex's role in protecting Airline's network. And—" A pause. "That viral story. The one about the flight," Alicia smiled faintly. "I can't comment on speculation. But I can tell you this, every company has turbulence. We just build smoother recoveries," the interviewer laughed. "That's quotable." "I know," she said. Within a week, the story turned from gossip into legend. Leadership blogs used it as a metaphor for composure. HR consultants quoted her silence as a masterclass in emotional intelligence. Business schools debated whether it was real or orchestrated. Alicia let them wonder. Her company's valuation rose 17% that month. Airline expanded the contract by another division, and investors began referring to Vertex Systems not just as a vendor, but as the unseen backbone of aviation tech. Late one evening, Maya entered her office again. "You should see this," she said, handing her a printed email. It was from Lauren. "Ms. Grant, I don't know if this will reach you directly, but thank you. I still have my job. I also have perspective. I learned something from that flight I'll never forget. Respect isn't given by where you sit. It's earned by how you stand when you're asked to move." Alicia read it twice, then set it down gently. "Send her a thank you gift," she said. "No logo, just flowers." "And a note," Maya asked. "What should it say?" Alicia thought for a moment, then said quietly, "To remind you, every flight has passengers, but only a few have pilots." That night she closed her laptop and stepped onto the balcony. The city lights blinked like circuitry, each one alive because someone, somewhere, had designed it to function under pressure. And that was her world, unseen but essential. She wasn't interested in revenge anymore. She was interested in legacy, the kind built in silence, steady, structured, impossible to move from its seat. By the second week, what started as a rumor had become a parable. LinkedIn posts turned the story into leadership lessons. Podcasts dissected her calmness as a masterclass in emotional control. Every business coach, HR strategist, and corporate influencer found a way to attach themselves to her name. But while the world admired the myth, Alicia Grant stayed focused on numbers. Myths don't pay dividends. Systems do, and her systems were thriving. Revenue was up 12% in 10 days. Airline renewed their long-term contract. 2 other airlines, still using outdated competitors, reached out quietly to schedule meetings. Her assistant, Maya, called it the ripple effect. Alicia called it momentum. At 7:30 a.m., she walked into the Vertex executive conference room. Every department head was there: product, security, finance, marketing. Coffee cups, sleeves rolled, focused faces. "Let's talk positioning," she began. The team lead for marketing spoke first. We've been flooded with partnership requests. Brands want to align with our image, control, ethics, composure. Alicia nodded. We'll choose carefully. No sponsorships. No shortcuts. If they want our name, they earn it. She turned to finance. And numbers? Contracts up across all sectors. The Airline event increased trust metrics. Investors see us as a stability asset. Good, she said. Keep it that way. Her COO, Patrick, leaned forward. You realize what's happening, right? You've become the face of restraint in leadership. People are turning you into a symbol. Alicia smiled faintly. Symbols fade. Infrastructure lasts. Let them post quotes. We'll keep running the systems they depend on. Patrick laughed. That's the most Alicia thing I've heard all week. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. The team knew her rhythm. Precision first, celebration later. Outside that room, things weren't as calm. Omnicore Systems, one of Vertex's oldest rivals, saw Arian's press coverage and started whispering into industry channels. Anonymous comments. Subtle shade. Claims that Vertex staged the crisis to win sympathy. By mid-afternoon, business blogs picked it up. Did Vertex engineer its own PR miracle? Was the outage more than coincidence? Her PR head, Samir, rushed in with a printout. We should respond before it gains traction. Alicia read the headline once, then twice. No, she said. We don't chase smoke. Let them talk. But it's getting attention, he pressed. That's fine, she said. Every headline with our name spells recognition. Every accusation reminds the market who's leading. Samir hesitated, then smiled. You really don't blink, do you? Only when landing, she said dryly. That evening, she was invited to speak at a leadership panel in New York. Last minute, high profile, sponsored by an investment group that managed aviation portfolios. She agreed, not for visibility, but for positioning. Visibility fades. Positioning lasts. 2 days later, she stood backstage at the summit, microphone clipped to her blazer. Lights dimmed before her name appeared on screen. Alicia Grant, CEO. Vertex Systems. Applause. Cameras. Phones lifted. She walked to the stage with the same measured grace she had on that flight. Calm, grounded, untouchable. The moderator smiled. Miss Grant, the world has watched your story unfold, from an unexpected flight moment to global influence. What's your secret to staying composed under pressure? She paused, scanning the audience. I don't stay composed, she said. I stay aware. A quiet ripple of surprise. Pressure only matters when you let someone else define the stakes, she continued. When you know the systems, when you build them, you stop reacting. You start anticipating. A pause. And when you're underestimated, she added, her tone precise, you don't argue. You let performance handle the conversation. The crowd erupted. Phones recorded. Her words were instantly clipped and reposted with captions like, "This is leadership." Later that night, in her hotel suite, she watched one of those clips herself. Her own face, composed and deliberate, shared across feeds with millions of views. She set the phone down and whispered to herself, Good, now we move. The next morning, an email from Arian's CEO appeared in her inbox. Subject, Internal Inquiry. Alicia, I'm dealing with a minor shareholder concern about the recent incident. They want assurance that the system you implemented can't be used. Selectively. Let's discuss. Richard, she smiled. The question was expected. And dangerous. She typed her reply carefully. Richard, the system follows corporate access hierarchy. No selective control exists outside authorized parameters. You're secure. AG, it was true, in theory. But authorized parameters still meant one thing. Vertex Systems was the gatekeeper. By noon, another call came, this time from Omnicore's CFO, a man she hadn't heard from in years. Ms. Grant, he began, you've had quite a month. Impressive. Maybe we can collaborate. Mergers, joint projects, something beneficial for both. Alicia's tone stayed even. "I appreciate the offer, but Vertex doesn't merge into stories. We write them." Silence. Then a forced laugh. "Fair enough." She ended the call and made a note. Omnicore, watching closely. That night, she walked through Vertex's operations floor. Rows of engineers, analysts, data scientists, screens glowing in coordinated rhythm. She stopped beside one screen displaying live metrics from Ariane's network. Stable, clean, controlled. Patrick joined her quietly. "Funny how one flight can change everything," she nodded. "It didn't change anything. It revealed what was already there." He looked at her. "What's next?" Alicia smiled faintly. "Expansion. If one airline learned the value of respect, others will follow. We're building a standard, not a story." Outside, snow drifted over Toronto's skyline, the city glowing with quiet resilience. Alicia watched from her glass office, reflection merging with the lights. Her grandmother's voice echoed again. "When you move with purpose, even the wind changes direction." And she realized this was no longer about one flight. It was about every space where power gets redefined. Boardrooms, networks, systems, skies. The ripple wasn't just digital. It was cultural. Every story that rises invites a challenger. For Alicia Grant, it came 3 weeks after the Airline deal, in the form of Victor Hale, CEO of Omnicore Systems, her oldest competitor and loudest skeptic. He wasn't subtle. Victor built his empire on visibility, the kind that looked polished on magazine covers and aggressive in quarterly reports. His PR team painted him as the visionary disruptor, a man who thrived on conflict and applause. And right now, he was gunning for her spotlight. The trigger came during a live panel. Hosted by the Global Tech Forum, Alicia was invited to speak about ethical innovation. Victor was the surprise. Guest, last-minute addition, introduced with a grin that carried the weight of rivalry. When the moderator welcomed them both, the audience buzzed. 2 industry titans on one stage, the calm strategist versus the showman. Victor leaned toward his mic first. "I think what we've seen recently," he said, smiling toward Alicia, "is a fascinating example of how good storytelling can overshadow real innovation." The crowd stirred. Alicia didn't move. He continued. "No disrespect, of course, but crises make great PR. Some companies handle them. Others create them." A few nervous laughs echoed around the hall. The moderator shifted uneasily. Alicia waited until the noise died down before speaking. Her voice was steady, unhurried. "Interesting point, Victor. But at Vertex, we don't create crises. We prevent them so efficiently, people forget they were ever possible." Applause, laughter, even the moderator smiled in relief. Victor's grin faltered, just slightly. After the event, reporters swarmed. Headlines wrote themselves, "Alicia Grant handles rival with surgical precision." Composure beats ego, again. Backstage, Victor approached her directly. "Nicely played," he said, voice tight. "You enjoy the spotlight more than you admit." She met his gaze evenly. "Spotlights are temporary. Systems last," he smirked. "We'll see how long your systems last when Omnicore releases AegisNet next quarter." She'd heard whispers, a direct competitor to her own Vertex security framework. Still, her tone didn't waver. "Then I look forward to the comparison." He leaned closer. "You won't. AegisNet won't just compete, it'll replace." Alicia smiled faintly. "Only if it works." Then she walked away. 3 days later, Omnicore announced an exclusive partnership with a smaller regional airline, Skybridge Air. Press releases declared it a modern alternative to outdated systems. The media, hungry for tension, framed it as a showdown. Omnicore's Victor Hale takes aim at Vertex. The return of rivalry in aviation tech. Inside Vertex's boardroom, her executives debated response strategies. Maya read from her tablet. "Investors are watching this closely. Omnicore's campaign paints us as legacy infrastructure. Patrick, her COO, looked annoyed. They're poking the bear. Alicia folded her arms. Let them. Bears don't roar at every rustle. Samir, her PR lead, frowned. Still, we can't let them control the narrative. She looked up. We won't. We'll redefine it. That afternoon, Alicia called her engineering head, Claire. I want full evaluation of Omnicore's AegisNet. Quietly. I need to know how it works, who designed it, and what it copies. Claire nodded. Give me 72 hours. Make it 48. 2 days later, Claire walked into her office, eyes sharp. Found something, she said, dropping a folder on the desk. Alicia scanned the report. Her lips tightened slightly. AegisNet wasn't new. It was a fork, a derivative build, of open-source software originally co-authored by one of Vertex's early developers 5 years ago. Legally clean. Ethically gray. Can they use it? Alicia asked. Yes, but they can't scale it safely. The architecture's unstable under high traffic. They're using it as marketing bait. Alicia closed the folder. Good. Then she leaned back, thinking. Silent, still but calculating. She didn't want to fight. She wanted proof. That evening, she wrote an internal memo to her communications team. Subject, timing the narrative. We don't counter Omnicore's claims. We demonstrate difference. Prepare a case study on Airline's 99.9% uptime since integration. Showcase reliability metrics verified by independent audits. Facts, not noise. Publish Friday morning. The memo ended with her signature. AG. Simple. Final. Friday morning. 8 a.m. The Vertex case study went live. Stability as strategy. How automation prevents downtime. Charts. Numbers. Real-world evidence. No mention of Omnicore. No comparison. Just facts. By noon, the response was everywhere. Analysts praised the restraint. Investors saw clarity. And quietly, engineers at rival firms noticed something. Vertex's new architecture benchmarks outperformed anything else on the market. Victor Hale's campaign started to wobble. By Monday, AegisNet crashed during a regional deployment test. Small issue, publicly dismissed. But the industry noticed, and so did Alicia. When Victor called her that afternoon, she answered without hesitation. Rough weekend? She said. He sighed. Enjoy it while it lasts, Alicia. I plan to, she said evenly. You leaked it, didn't you? She laughed quietly. Victor, you can't leak what's already public. Maybe you should have stress-tested your innovation before advertising it. He exhaled sharply. You played dirty? No, she said. I play patient, then hung up. That evening, she sat in her office alone, city lights shimmering against the glass. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself a small moment of reflection. People often mistake silence for weakness, but silence is where power matures. Noise fades. Results linger. The Aryan flight had been one test. This was another. Both ended the same way, calm precision prevailing over chaos. She poured herself a glass of water and looked out at the skyline. Maya stepped in quietly. You saw the news. Omnicore's shares dropped 6%. Alicia nodded. They'll recover. Competitors always do. Still feels good, though, Maya said, smiling. Alicia looked back at her reflection in the window. It feels predictable. As Maya left, Alicia's phone buzzed. An email from Airline's CEO, Richard. Subject, Leadership Panel. Invite Alicia. We're hosting a Global Aviation Leadership Summit next month. We'd like you to keynote. Theme, Control Under Pressure. It suits you. Richard, Alicia smiled. She typed her reply. I'll be there. And yes, it does. That night, she opened her laptop and reviewed one last message from Vertex's Analytics Division. Market Impact. Vertex Perception. Trusted Authority. Omnicore Perception. Reactive Competitor. Engagement Ratio, 4.1 in your favor. She closed the report and turned off the screen. There was no need to gloat. The data spoke clearly. Silence had once again proven louder than noise. Outside, rain streaked the office glass, city lights blurring into reflection. She thought about power again, how fragile it looked when built on ego, and how enduring it felt when rooted in clarity. Tomorrow, another headline would come, another rival would rise, and she'd meet them the same way she'd met every challenge, with calm hands, clear logic, and a quiet understanding that not every seat in power needs to recline, some just need to remain grounded. The air inside the Global Aviation Leadership Summit buzzed with expectation. Alicia Grant had become more than a name. She was the story. Cameras followed her as she entered the glass-walled conference center in Geneva. No red carpet, no entourage, just quiet poise and precision in motion. Black suit, silver pin, phone off. Executives from 22 airlines were present. Ministers, investors, journalists, every seat filled before her keynote. Her topic, control under pressure. Backstage, her assistant Maya adjusted her mic. "You've got the front page of the program," she said. "People are calling you the architect of calm." Alicia smiled faintly. "Titles are temporary. Outcomes last. Still," Maya said, "enjoy this one. You earned it." Alicia looked toward the audience through the curtain. She didn't see fame. She saw systems, layers of decision-making, hierarchies, agendas, and she knew how to move through all of them. The lights dimmed. Her introduction echoed through the hall. "Please welcome the CEO of Vertex Systems, Ms. Alicia Grant." Applause. Standing ovation before she even spoke. She took the stage with her usual measured stride, waited until the room stilled, then began. "Pressure," she said, "isn't a test of strength. It's a test of structure." A pause. "When things fall apart under stress, it's rarely because people failed. It's because systems weren't built to support them." The audience leaned in. "At Vertex, we don't design for calm skies. We design for turbulence, because that's when the world reveals what's real." Behind her, the screen shifted. Images of airports, flight grids, data flows. She continued, voice calm but commanding. "The truth is, leadership isn't about control. It's about clarity. The difference between panic and precision is one thing. Preparation." Her cadence was deliberate, her pauses surgical. "And sometimes," she added, "preparation looks like silence. Because silence isn't absence, it's awareness. It's where decisions breathe before they're made." A hush fell over the room. It wasn't a speech anymore. It was a lesson. She looked up from her notes. When the world tells you to move from your seat, ask yourself one question. Did they earn the right to tell you where you belong? You could hear the collective inhale. Phones recorded. Journalists typed furiously. The applause came in waves, slow, building, unrelenting. Alicia nodded once, then stepped back as the moderator returned to the stage. Minutes later, social feeds exploded. "Alicia Grant owns the summit." The calmest voice in business just redefined leadership. Control under pressure, a masterclass. Her words were everywhere within hours, quoted, reposted, turned into slides and slogans. But for Alicia, it wasn't vanity. It was strategy. Every sentence she spoke had been calibrated to reposition Vertex not as a vendor, but as an indispensable thought leader in aviation's digital age. That evening, she attended a private dinner for the summit's top executives. 15 people around a long table overlooking Lake Geneva. Wine glasses, soft conversation. The kind of gathering where deals start quietly. Seated across from her was Henrik Soren, the CEO of Eurofly, one of Europe's fastest-growing carriers. "I followed your work for years," Henrik said. "But that speech, that was something else," Alicia smiled. "I just spoke the truth. The industry doesn't need louder voices. It needs smarter systems," he nodded. "And more of your systems, apparently. Our board wants to meet next week." Then let's make it official, she said, handing him her card. He took it, impressed. You don't waste time. Neither do airplanes, she said. Across the table, Richard Vale of Airline raised his glass toward her. To the woman who grounded us, and then made us fly again. Laughter. But behind it, respect. Victor Hale wasn't there. Omnicore hadn't been invited. Later that night, alone in her hotel suite, Alicia stood by the window watching the city lights ripple across the lake. Her phone buzzed with new messages, partnership requests, interview offers, even a quiet inquiry from a government minister about digital defense collaboration. Success was expanding faster than she could process, and yet she felt calm. The same calm she'd carried in row 5C on that flight, because this wasn't luck, it was design. She opened her laptop and reviewed her notes from earlier meetings. Her next phase was already underway. Vertex Cloud Integration, an adaptive AI model to predict operational failures before they occurred. It wasn't public yet, but after the summit, it would be unstoppable. She wrote one line at the top of the file. Control doesn't come from reaction. It comes from readiness. Then she saved it under the title, Project Horizon. The next morning, she flew back to Toronto. This time, she didn't sit in first class. She didn't need to. The flight attendants recognized her instantly. "Ms. Grant," one said, "it's an honor having you on board." Alicia smiled gently. "Thank you." As she settled into her seat, she looked out the window and watched the tarmac blur into motion. Somewhere above the clouds, she thought, was the moment everything had changed, when a forced relocation became a quiet revolution. Halfway through the flight, her assistant texted from another row. "News update, your summit speech just hit 10 million views. Investors calling it the new standard of composure." Alicia replied with one line. "Prepare next phase. Time to turn visibility into velocity." When the plane landed, her driver was waiting as always. "Welcome back, Ms. Grant. Summit looked like a success." "It was," she said. "Now the work begins." He smiled in the rearview mirror. "You ever get tired of being calm?" She looked out the window, watching the city lights flicker by. "Calm isn't what I feel," she said softly. "It's what I build." That night, she stepped into her empty office, placed the Summit Award on her desk, and turned off the lights. The room glowed faintly from the city beyond the glass. Everything she had built, every line of code, every contract, every measured silence, had led here. Not revenge. Not validation. Just control. The kind earned, tested, and proven under pressure. She whispered to herself, "Systems don't chase storms. They outlast them." 2 months after the Geneva summit, Vertex Systems looked different. New contracts, new investors, new silence, the kind that comes when even your competitors stop arguing. But with growth came weight. Every move Alicia made now echoed across industries. Her face was on magazine covers, investor decks, and leadership seminars. The architect of calm had become a global symbol of composure and control. Yet, in her private moments, she still moved like she did on that first flight. Quiet, deliberate, observant. It was a Thursday morning when her board convened in the top-floor conference room overlooking downtown Toronto. The air was crisp, sunlight washing over polished wood and glass. Patrick, her COO, started the meeting. "We've received a buyout proposal," he said, sliding a document toward her. "From who?" "Omnicore." The name hung in the air. Alicia didn't react. "They're offering $4.2 billion, Patrick said. "Full acquisition. Merge their infrastructure with ours under your leadership. Publicly, they'll call it a partnership. Privately, it's a surrender." The room waited. Alicia skimmed the offer, flipping through projections, equity adjustments, non-compete clauses. Victor Hale's signature sat at the bottom. "Interesting," she said finally. Maya leaned forward. "It's a power move. He wants the optics of humility, that he can collaborate instead of compete." Patrick added, It's a win either way. You'd be untouchable. Alicia closed the folder gently. I already am, she said. Later that afternoon, she walked through the engineering floor. Hundreds of screens glowing with live data, lines of code shaping the future of aviation. Every hum, every click, every alert was a reminder. Systems never sleep. Claire, the head of development, caught up beside her. Big news about the offer? Circulating already? People talk, Claire said. Everyone's wondering what you'll do. Alicia stopped beside the glass wall overlooking the city. What would you do? Claire smiled. Sell, retire, start a foundation. You've already proven your point. Alicia looked out at the skyline. The horizon stretched wide, calm, steady. That's the thing about proving a point, she said. Once you do, they expect you to stop. But structure doesn't stop. It scales. That night, Alicia reviewed her journal. Not digital, not cloud-based, just handwritten pages she'd kept since her first day as CEO. Every major decision, every lesson learned the hard way. She flipped back to an old entry dated 7 years earlier. Goal: build something that can function without me. Her eyes lingered on the sentence. That was the real test of legacy. Not the size of the company, but its ability to survive independence. The next morning, she called a full executive meeting. The boardroom buzzed with tension. Patrick whispered, "You're rejecting it, aren't you?" She didn't answer. She stood, placed the Omnicore offer in the center of the table, and said, "We're not merging." Silence. Maya spoke first. "That's billions, Alicia. Why walk away?" "Because we don't sell structure," she said. "We build standards." She looked around the table. When Vertex started, we weren't just writing code. We were writing behavior. How companies handle crisis, how leaders define calm. You can't sell that. You can only protect it. No one argued. They just listened. Later that day, she sent one message directly to Victor Hale. Subject: RE, Acquisition Proposal. Victor, Vertex Systems isn't for sale. But I appreciate the reminder of how far we've come. Best, Alicia minutes later, he replied, "You've changed the game, Alicia. I can admit that now. Just remember, games evolve." She smiled at the screen. They do. That's why I build the rules. Then she closed the laptop. That evening, she left the office early and took a quiet drive toward the waterfront. The city was glowing. Calm, rhythmic, alive with its own kind of pulse. She found a small cafe overlooking the harbor and sat alone with a cup of tea. No phone, no noise, just silence. Across the water, a plane took off, lights rising steadily into the night sky. She watched it until it disappeared behind the clouds. A symbol, she thought. Full circle. The woman they moved from first class now moved entire industries. Her phone buzzed once, a message from Maya. News just broke. Omnicore stock dipped 11%. Analysts say the rejection shows your dominance. Alicia typed one line back. Dominance isn't the point. Direction is. When she returned home that night, she stood before her mirror for a long moment. Not vanity. Reflection. Her grandmother's words surfaced again, clearer now than ever. Some people only see your place when you remind them where you belong, Alicia whispered softly, and some systems remind them for you. The next morning, she met with her leadership team one last time that week. They expected strategy updates. Instead, she announced something none of them predicted. "I'm stepping back," she said. "Not leaving, elevating." Confusion flickered across the room. Patrick asked, "Stepping back to do what?" "To give space," she said. "Structure needs succession. I've built the system. Now I'll build the framework for whoever leads next." Maya stared. "You're creating your own replacement?" "I'm creating continuity," she corrected. In the months that followed, Vertex Systems transitioned from a company to an institution. Alicia established the Grant Institute for Strategic Systems, a think tank for ethical AI, infrastructure design, and leadership under pressure. Her focus shifted from control to teaching others how to maintain it. from holding power to designing it sustainably. At conferences, her message evolved. True leadership isn't about being unshakable. It's about building systems that don't shake when you're gone. Her words became more than a philosophy. They became protocol. A year later, she attended the opening ceremony of a new air traffic command center built entirely on Vertex technology. She stood at the edge of the runway, hair caught in the wind, watching planes rise one after another. Clean, seamless, efficient. Richard Vail approached her quietly. "You know, people still talk about that flight," he said. She smiled. "Good, they should. That's where everything took off," he laughed. "You ever miss the fight?" Alicia looked up at the sky. "No," she said softly. "I miss the silence after it." That night, as she wrote her final entry in her journal, she paused before closing it. Legacy isn't built from noise. It's built from the systems that stay calm when you're gone. She signed her initials at the bottom. AG, then placed the journal in a drawer, turned off the lamp and let the room fall silent. Somewhere outside, another plane climbed into the night, guided by code she wrote years ago. Smooth, steady, unshakable, and that, she thought, was legacy. A year after Alicia Grant stepped back from daily operations, the world kept quoting her without realizing it. Her words, control under pressure, had entered corporate vocabulary, boardroom slides, even MBA curricula. The sentence had outgrown the woman, and that was the point. At Vertex Systems, the morning routine hadn't changed. The same hum of servers, the same light spill through the glass walls. But there was one difference. People spoke her name like a protocol, not a myth. Would Alicia approve this rollout? What would Alicia ask before we push this update? She'd become a measurement, not a memory. Patrick Nguyen now sat in her chair as CEO, though he refused the title successor. She built systems, not pedestals, he'd said during his first town hall. She taught us that leadership is just another layer of architecture, functional, not ornamental. The staff applauded, but Alicia, watching the live stream from her home office, simply smiled. He'd understood. From her condo overlooking the lake, Alicia worked quietly on the Grant Institute. No investors, no shareholders, just minds, engineers, ethicists, behavioral scientists, exploring how technology could sustain calm in chaos. She called the project Continuum, a framework that mapped how decisions ripple across time. How does a single choice alter a system 10 years later? She asked her team, how do we design technology that remembers who we wanted to be when we built it? They called it philosophy. She called it maintenance. One morning, Maya, now director of programs, entered her office. "Got something you'll want to see," she said, handing her a thin folder. It was a proposal from the International Aviation Consortium. They wanted Alicia to chair a new committee on AI ethics in autonomous flight. "They're offering full discretion," Maya said. "You'd write the standards every manufacturer has to follow." Alicia traced the heading with her thumb. "So, this was the next altitude. Tell them I'll accept," she said, "if we make one rule clear." Maya smiled. "Which one?" "No shortcuts," Alicia replied. "Not for profit, not for pressure. If a system compromises calm, it's not progress." That afternoon, she visited Vertex for the first time in months. Employees stopped mid-conversation when they saw her. No fanfare, no announcement, just quiet acknowledgement. The founder returning to observe what she'd built. Patrick met her in the lobby. "Feels different without you here every day," he said. "It should," she answered. "If it didn't, I failed." They toured the operations floor. Every dashboard gleamed with stable metrics, uptime percentages, predictive analytics, the living evidence of structure holding steady. "Do you ever miss running it?" he asked. She paused. "No, I miss building it. But that's what the Institute is for, to keep building without owning." He nodded slowly. "You turned control into culture." That was the idea. Outside, a light drizzle coated the windows. From her reflection in the glass, she could see the skyline she once conquered now breathing without her. Exactly as planned. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. From Lauren Peters. I'm a flight instructor now, training new attendants on crisis management. I use your story as an example. How calm rewrites command. Thought you'd want to know. Alicia read it twice, then smiled. Legacy, she thought, isn't about headlines. It's about echoes. Weeks later, she stood on another stage, smaller, quieter, the first Grant Institute Symposium. The audience wasn't executives this time. It was engineers, students, designers, builders. She began simply, when I started Vertex, people thought control meant dominance. It doesn't. It means design. Building things that don't collapse when nobody's watching. She paused. Systems mirror their makers. If you build from fear, they react in panic. If you build from clarity, they endure. She looked out at the rows of faces. Young. Eager, uncertain. One day, she said, you'll write the code that decides how millions move, communicate, or fly. When that day comes, don't ask if it's perfect. Ask if it's calm. The room was silent. Not with tension, with understanding. After the event, Maya found her backstage, eyes bright. They loved it, she said. You turned engineering into poetry. Alicia chuckled. Poetry's just structure that remembers emotion. You ever think about writing a book? Maya asked. Alicia smiled. No, I prefer leaving blank pages for others to fill. That night, as she drove home along the lakeshore, the city lights shimmered on the water like circuit lines. A news alert flashed on the car display, breaking new AI flight protocol. Drafted by former Vertex CEO Alicia Grant. Industry calls it the Calm Code. She turned off the screen and let the silence return. Calm Code. They'd finally given her philosophy a name. Months later, she returned to the airport, not as a CEO, not as a passenger of status, but as herself. No priority boarding, no attention. Just one traveler among many. She sat near the gate, unnoticed, watching departures scroll across digital boards powered by the system she'd built. Rows of destinations, London, Nairobi, Seoul, all running on invisible precision. The attendant at the counter announced delays due to a weather front. No one panicked. No shouting. People simply waited. The systems held. She smiled to herself. When her flight boarded, she took an aisle seat this time. No champagne. No ceremony. As the plane ascended, she opened her notebook and wrote one final line. Legacy isn't an ending. It's a structure that teaches the next storm how to behave. She closed the book, leaned back and watched the clouds blur past. Outside, turbulence brushed the wings, but inside, everything stayed steady, smooth, balanced, controlled exactly as she designed it. 3 years after the Airline incident, Alicia Grant no longer ran a company. She ran a framework. Her ideas, codified as the Grant Standards for Ethical Systems Design, were now referenced by governments, defense contractors, and universities across the world. No single company owned them. They were open source. That was her condition. She believed that control meant nothing unless it could be distributed responsibly. In Geneva, the Global Technology Ethics Council convened for its annual session. Alicia sat at the head of the table, a place she had never sought but now occupied effortlessly. Representatives from 31 countries filled the room. Policy advisors, engineers, ministers, CEOs. They'd come to vote on an amendment to the Grant Standards, a clause that would determine how autonomous decision-making systems operated in high-risk environments. Aviation, defense, healthcare. To most, it was a vote. To her, it was a line between future and failure. The discussion dragged for hours. Statistics, case studies, corporate lobbying. Some pushed for flexibility. Others wanted complete regulation. When the floor finally opened to her, Alicia spoke softly. The same calm tone that once silenced boardrooms and filled auditoriums. When I built systems, she said, I learned one truth. Every shortcut creates a future crisis. Every line of unchecked code is a potential failure someone will one day apologize for. She paused, scanning the faces around her. We can't legislate instinct, she continued, but we can design around it. The world doesn't need faster systems. It needs safer ones, systems that pause before they act. No one interrupted. The weight of her words carried its own authority. When the vote concluded, her amendment passed, unanimously. Outside the council hall, reporters swarmed. Alicia, do you think the grant standards will limit innovation? One asked. She smiled faintly. No, boundaries don't limit creativity. They protect it, another voice called out. What's next for you now that the standards are global policy? She looked past the crowd, her eyes reflecting the marble facade of the UN building behind them. What's next, she said, is teaching the next generation how to build calm into chaos. Weeks later, back in Toronto, Alicia walked through the Grant Institute's campus, a minimalist complex of glass and greenery that looked more like a meditation retreat than a tech hub. Students worked quietly in open labs. Screens displayed live simulations of aircraft navigation, energy grids, and emergency AI protocols. Each model ran on the same foundational code, the CALM protocol, a direct descendant of the system she'd written years ago for Vertex. Maya, now director of global programs, caught up beside her. You've turned this place into the new Oxford for ethics, she said. Alicia smiled. Ethics should feel structured, not abstract. People perform better when they know the limits are there to protect them, not restrain them. Maya nodded. And yet everyone still wants you on their board. I'm not done building, Alicia said. I just moved from code to culture. Later that afternoon, Alicia taught a guest lecture, her first in years. Students filled the small amphitheater. No recording, no press. Just dialogue. She started with a story. 3 years ago, someone moved me from my seat on a flight, she said. They didn't know who I was. They didn't mean harm, but they made a choice based on a system that didn't account for humanity. The students listened closely. That day taught me something most leaders never learn. Power doesn't disappear when dismissed. It observes, it adapts, it waits for the moment to demonstrate it doesn't need validation. A hand rose in the audience. Do you ever wish you had spoken up that day? A student asked. Alicia smiled softly. No, silence was my first system test, and the world failed it. That's why I built new ones. After the lecture, a young engineer approached her. Nervous but determined. Ms. Grant, he said, I joined the Institute because I read about that flight. It changed how I see leadership. She looked him in the eye. How so? He hesitated, then said, I used to think composure meant weakness, like staying quiet meant losing, but you made it strategy. You made it design. Alicia placed a hand on his shoulder. Good, she said. Then I did my job. That night, she sat on the terrace overlooking the lake, a scene almost identical to her earlier years, except now she wasn't alone. Patrick joined her with 2 cups of tea. Do you ever miss it? He asked. The adrenaline of running Vertex? She shook her head. I still run it, just indirectly. Systems don't need ownership to remain obedient. He laughed quietly. That's the most Alicia sentence I've ever heard, she smiled. It's not control I miss, it's construction, the act of building something that outlives urgency. As dusk settled, her phone buzzed again. A message from the Aviation Safety Council. Subject, Incident Review, Autonomous Landing Successful. No casualties. System followed CALM protocol precisely. You were right, it works. She read it twice, then set the phone down. Her system had just saved lives on another continent. Silently, perfectly, exactly as designed. No headlines. No fanfare. Just function. That was enough. Later, as the city lights rippled across the lake, Alicia spoke softly, almost to herself. Every leader wants to make noise, she said. Few realize silence has the longest echo. Patrick looked at her. You think anyone else will ever build like you did? She turned toward him, eyes calm, certain. They already are. They just don't know it yet. The next morning, a new article appeared on a global business site. The Grant Standard: How One Woman Redefined Leadership in Technology. The subheading read, From CEO to Philosopher of Systems, Alicia Grant's calm protocol becomes the backbone of modern decision-making. She didn't read it. She was already in another meeting, mentoring a group of young founders about structural ethics. Her focus stayed on what mattered: the next generation of builders who wouldn't need to learn calm from turbulence. At the end of that session, a student asked, "What happens when the next crisis comes?" Alicia smiled. "It won't be about who reacts first," she said. "It'll be about whose systems are prepared to stay still." As she left the building, the sky above Toronto buzzed faintly, another wave of autonomous aircraft crossing the horizon, guided by invisible frameworks carrying her signature principles. She stopped for a moment, watching the pattern of movement, organized, balanced, and utterly calm. Then she whispered, "Not bad for someone who once got moved out of first class," and she laughed quietly to herself, not with arrogance, but with peace. The calm had come full circle. There are stories that end with applause and stories that end with silence. Alicia Grant's ended with both, not in the moment she won. Not in the moment the world recognized her, but in the space after, the long, steady breath between what was built and what remained. The Grant Standards had become law in 34 nations. Vertex Systems, though no longer hers, still ran the arteries of global travel. Her institute had trained a new generation of builders, coders who treated ethics like mathematics, leaders who treated calm like oxygen. But none of that was what she remembered most. What stayed with her was the feeling of that first flight, the stillness before the engines rose, the restraint before reaction. She once thought control meant having power. Now she knew it meant not needing it. At dawn, she stood by the lake again, the same one she'd watched for years. The city behind her pulsed with systems she'd designed: energy grids, traffic flows, airport algorithms, all whispering in harmony. No headlines. No spotlight. Just the hum of a world still running because calm had been coded into its core. Maya joined her, coffee in hand. "People are calling the new framework the Calm Code," she said. "You realize you've started a movement?" Alicia smiled. Movements fade. Codes persist. Later that morning, she taught her final seminar. No cameras. Just 20 students in a quiet room filled with sunlight and whiteboards. She began the way she always did, with a question. "What do you think makes a system trustworthy?" One student said, "Accuracy." Another said, "Security." Alicia shook her head gently. "Predictability. That's what trust feels like. When chaos comes and you know exactly what your system will do, that's trust." A pause. "And people," she added, "are systems, too." After class, she walked through the hall lined with portraits of innovators. Most looked heroic, grand, larger than life. Her portrait was different. A candid photo, her half-smile caught in mid-thought. Underneath, the inscription read, "Calm is not the absence of motion. It's the mastery of it." She hadn't chosen the quote, but she approved of it. That evening, she received a call from Henrik Sorn of Eurofly. "Your standards just prevented our first major systems failure," he said. Everything froze for 13 seconds, then stabilized perfectly. Not one passenger noticed. Alicia exhaled softly. "Good," she said. "That's how calm should work, invisible." Henrik chuckled. "You really believe silence can save the world, don't you?" She looked out over the lake. "It already has," she said. "People just haven't realized it yet." At night, she opened her journal for the first time in months. Most of the pages were full. Graphs, reflections, phrases that had guided her through storms. On the final page, she wrote, "Calm must be designed, not demanded. And if designed well, it survives its designer." She closed the book, placed it on her shelf beside a small silver pin, the same one she'd worn on every flight since that day. Years later, historians would trace the evolution of the COM code, how it influenced everything from aviation to medicine, how its principles defined an era of responsible automation. But none of them could capture the quiet in her voice when she said, "Systems should breathe." They'd quote her endlessly. They'd teach her frameworks. But they'd never fully grasped that her genius wasn't what she built. It was what she refused to break. On her last recorded interview, a journalist asked, "Ms. Grant, when you look back, what moment defined your journey?" She smiled slightly. "The moment I didn't react," the journalist frowned. "On that flight?" "Yes," she said. "That silence bought me everything. Long after she was gone, every autonomous plane in the world would still display a line of code before takeoff. G, protocol. COM, mode, SU. True, no one changed it. No one questioned it. It became ritual. A quiet acknowledgement to the architect of steadiness. And somewhere, high above the clouds, a passenger would lean back as turbulence hit, feel the plane steady itself, and whisper without knowing why, "She built this."